Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, why the internet needs its own version of cancer researchers bypassing chip and pin protection, and the 2016 Pwnie Awards from Blackhat. Then it's your great questions, our answers, a rockin' roundup, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 279 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. We stream this episode live on August 4th, 2016. This episode's brought to you by our three fine sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and iXsystems. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. Our live stream, that's made possible by the powerful Scale Engine over at scaleengine.com. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher. It's Mr. Alan Jude. Hello, Alan.
Hello, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Hi there. So guess what, Alan? I'm pretty excited because there's a lot of DEF CON stuff to still break down. Well, Blackhat DEF CON.
Yeah.
DEF CON's on my mind, but yeah. Yeah, and so I every time, I love parsing through the stories that come out in the TechSNAP program. Yep. And so we have a good selection, plus the feedback today is looking really good. There's a couple of questions that I've been wanting to get to now for like 2 weeks that finally made it into the show. We'll be answering those. So you want to just kick it off with our first story?
Yep.
All righty.
Right. Well, we have Dan Kaminsky saying that we need to fix this internet before it breaks.
That's bold.
Again.
Okay.
So he says, what we call the internet was not our first attempt at making a global data network. It's actually, just the one that worked. And if we don't fix it, it'll break and it'll cease being the internet, and we will have the next internet, and we'll probably call it something silly. So really, since, most of our economy kind of depends on some of it now.
Jeez, no kidding.
We might want to fix this.
Yeah.
He says, there's no guarantee that the internet will succeed. And if we aren't careful, we can really screw it up. And it has happened before, and we could do it again. So Kaminsky, who delivered the keynote for the 6,000-person Blackhat USA 2016 conference, said problems that need to be addressed within the security community are political, technical, and just the way the security community actually collaborates. For too long, the security community has been about security companies and making money. And at some point, it's like, this is critical infrastructure. We need to...
that's got to be a tricky one.
Fixing it, not selling antivirus software.
There's so much reputation and branding and marketing and all of that that's also at play that's got to make that a particularly toxic arrangement. Yeah.
So his big gripe is the internet doesn't have the equivalent of the guy that's working on cancer. We need institutions and systems. We need to have something like the National Institutes of Health, or NIH, but for cybersecurity. It needs to be have good, stable funding. We need research. Problem-solving solutions are too often conducted in fiefdoms that seldom share the collective solutions needed to help fix the big security issues of the day. Right? The security research companies don't want to solve the problem for everyone. They want to solve the problem for the people that buy their product.
Yeah, so they can leverage that and monetize it.
Yeah, right. And it's, what we need are people that are doing this for the greater good of the internet, not just themselves, right? It's kind of, the corollary to the healthcare system is one thing, except for we've seen, even healthcare is kind of going more towards this model of we don't make cures anymore. We just make treatments. So
absolutely.
Take these pills for the rest of your life and pay us the whole time instead of this one pill that will cure it instead. But so maybe the corollary there is a little off. But is saying that we need this research to happen for the sake of the research and for improving the protocols and so on, not just for selling products. He says, I'm worried. I'm worried about our ability to innovate and our ability to create, and I'm worried that we're not building the sort of infrastructure to make the internet a safe place. By taking an NIH type of approach,
non-invented,
argued, no, that's National Institutes for Health.
Okay.
Kaminsky argued the internet would foster a large number of deeply committed security experts to work independently and away from commercial interests and push the security sector to come up with quick, currently the commercial interest pushes the security sector to come up with quick fixes to solve big security problems, not actually deal with the underlying problems in the infrastructure.
So he's saying like an institutional setup.
Yes. So we need to make the changes, and we need to have studies about the way we program and the methods that people use to build secure things. So this is what I'm looking to answer is, forget the layers of abstraction and politics and all that. How about we get 100 nerds working on a project for 10 years without interrupting them or harassing them or telling them to do something else, right? So that this is not doing, working at a security company and getting to do some research. This is, you're just given what you need and just go research and solve these problems without interruption and without outside influences about, oh, we got to do this to make money, or you need to stop working on that and do something else, right? And he says, how can we make this happen? You don't make that happen is how you don't make that happen is what we have in InfoSec today, and that's with the spare time of a small number of highly paid consultants. We can do better than that.
What do you think about like Google's Project Zero?
Right. That's paying a couple of people to work full time, but they're still, kind of directed by Google's interests and so on.
Right.
What you almost need more is, money to well, I don't even know if universities are the right place because they can get too political too.
There was the core infrastructure project by the Linux Foundation.
Well, that's not just the Linux Foundation, but that's a pool of money given for people to work on stuff, but it's not quite. That's more about fixing the problems in specific core bits of software rather than just generic research. But yes, it's things like that.
Yeah, that's true. So do you think there needs to be a entirely new creation of an institution?
Well, I think probably something kind of similar to the core infrastructure initiative, but it would need to have even more money and just basically it would need to have enough money that it could guarantee that, all right, we're going to hire you and you get to work on this for 2 years, rather than, every 4 months we'll decide if we have enough funding to keep you working on this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be nice if there was elements of public funding. So when we pass things like CISPA or CISA, and we increase funding to certain things like data sharing inside the federal government and hiring new divisions to make that possible, it would be nice if that money instead could be spent on something like this. Public funds for the public good.
Yeah, well, the Netherlands did this when they gave a bunch of money to OpenSSL to try to improve things there, right?
Sure.
But yeah, so creating a depoliticized, though, is like, well, you don't want it run by the government because the government has what it wants out of it. It's like, so you can research this and this and this, but none of these things, because we were using these to exploit things, and so we don't want you solving those problems.
That's no good. Yeah, that won't work.
Yeah, it's a difficult problem, but it is something that we need to come up with. Yeah, so Comiskey doesn't see the National Institute of Health type approach as a panacea that's going to solve all the problems. But in fact, in his talk, he described the delicate balancing act where the security community derives the benefit of broader administration without being hamstrung by political controls. Mm-hmm. He says control, greed, and companies driven by profits are what killed the internet of the 1990s, right? He argues that AOL tried to create a walled garden and control everything and make billions, but that internet failed. There are two models of the internet. There's the walled garden, and then there's freedom. The walled garden is, okay, here's your environment, and go ahead and try and use it. Whereas the other model is that people can put stuff up, and other people can use it and abuse it. People don't need to ask for permission, and they don't need to beg. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't.
You could argue Facebook might be a little bit of the walled garden model, too, with some success.
Yeah, so I would say that if you look at Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft, they're each kind of created their own little walled garden, and they try as hard as they can to keep you inside of that.
Yeah.
Especially on the enterprise side, Microsoft does a really good job with this, with SharePoint and stuff, and it's like, all your components have to be Microsoft or it breaks down real quick, right? But yeah, it's like Facebook. How often do members of your family that use the internet actually end up outside of Facebook, except for maybe a link from Facebook to some other thing?
to clickbait.
Facebook is working very hard on having the news content keep you inside Facebook and not go out to the newspaper's website, right?
Right.
And so, yes, they're kind of, or worse, you see, like in India, where it's like, oh, we'll give you free internet, but you can only use Facebook on it. Mm-hmm. You really are creating these walled gardens.
Or also, Google's kind of doing the same thing with the Android One phones. They're subsidizing access to Google Play. So you can use Google services for free on the mobile network, but anything else you have to pay for.
Yeah. He warns the same way that AOL's walled garden threatened a free internet in the 1990s, government control over encryption could have the same stifling effect on innovation and cyber liberties. So he says, let's stop the encryption debate. This is actually entirely useless. It's driving all the energy away from the things we actually need to fix. It's like as if we didn't learn from the Clipper chip stuff and from the fact that all the crypto downgrade attacks that we've been subject to in the last 2 years because of the old export laws from the 1990s. How is this even still an option? But stop talking about it. It's dead. We're not going to backdoor crypto.
Just last week at a press conference, FBI Director James Comey said that the debate needs to continue, that we have to discuss this now because if we don't discuss it...
to understand that with the math of it, you can't have secure crypto with a backdoor. They're like, oh, they just need to work harder. It's like, you don't seem to understand.
Yeah, and he claims that if we don't have this discussion now, that something will be rammed through after a terrorist attack, the next terrorist attack. And
that is true, but we need to be smarter than that.
It feels like there's no conversation to be had, and so there's nothing to talk about, and then we're going to just have something forced upon us.
It'll be terrible. We know that we know for a fact this doesn't work. We have proof that if we do this 10 years from now, we will be really, really upset with ourselves.
Right.
It only ever makes it worse.
Yeah, boy, just our news stories alone just bear that out.
Exactly. Topping Kaminsky's Fix-It list was devising better way for the security community to collectively move the security ball forward and not view security solutions as individual races to win. Right? Let's take our obscure knowledge and real expertise and make it available to the rest of the security community. By sharing knowledge and solution, it allows us to find flaws quicker and fix them even faster. Right? Whereas the security companies are all in a race against each other and trying to keep everything they can secret because it's all about PR for them, right? Because that's what moves units of their product.
Yeah, I agree.
And so it's not about having the splashiest vuln with the coolest name or having the fastest fix. It's about actually being in it for the long term and actually fixing the infrastructural problems.
Yeah, although I don't know if that's true for a lot of people. I think for a lot of them, it is about having the flashiest name, finding the coolest vulnerability.
That's what it is about, not what it should be about.
Yeah, that I agree with. And I wonder if that's going to... I don't mean to make this a soapbox thing, but with so many interests like private companies and governments all over the world willing to pay absolute top dollar for this stuff, it feels like there is this continuous high-pressure incentive to get a reputation, to get a name for yourself, to get big contracts by doing those things. I don't see this really improving right away unless there's...
Well, that's why a heavyweight like Dan Kaminsky is sitting there at Blackhat in front of all the companies that are the problem, saying, "Hey, if you don't want us to accidentally destroy the entire internet,
that's a good point.
We need to start acting a little, less greedy."
Hopefully, they listen.
Nobody's saying we can't make any money off this. It's just saying that maybe we need to
remember these things are becoming critical.
Yeah, and sponsor some stuff over here on the side to have some independent research that's available to all of us. Things that are of benefit to all of us and not necessarily the secret sauce of our products. Developed that way.
All right. Interesting. I'm glad you grabbed that. And it sounds like an important keynote, too.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about something else that's important. That's DigitalOcean, sponsor of the TechSNAP program. Go over there and check them out, digitalocean.com, and use the promo code SNAPOcean. You apply that to your account, and you can get a $10 credit. DigitalOcean is cloud hosting like you've never seen before. We all know that the cloud means other people's computers, so make sure the computers you pick are damn good ones with great features, a great interface to management, a straightforward API, and data centers all over the world. Their control panel is like nobody else's. It's not just good for an app. It's good. It's not just like a nice web page. It's It is like literally one of the best interfaces to manage this I've seen, bar none. On top of that, they have a bunch of great apps you can use on your desktop, your mobile, and the web, plug into your existing libraries, because they have a fantastic API that's extremely well documented and lots of code has been written for it. That's one of my favorite features of DigitalOcean.
You can tell that their control panel uses that API, and so it has all the features.
Yeah.
And they did a very nice job with that.
Yeah, they did. They did. I also, I think we've mentioned it recently, but I think it's worth a plug. They've rolled out high availability block storage recently, and like Alan said last week, you combine that with FreeBSD and ZFS because they do make FreeBSD available on their droplets.
Yep, and they have ZFS on root images available now as well.
Oh.
So even the little bit of storage that comes with each droplet can be ZFS now.
Oh, man. Yeah. In fact, take a look at their pricing. And remember, if you use the promo code SNAPOcean, you get a $10 credit. Try out the hourly pricing. For 3 cents an hour, you could get 2 gigs of RAM, 2-core processor, 40 gigabyte SSD, 3 terabytes of transfer, or $5 a month is another way to look at it. You get 512 megs of RAM, 1 core, 20 gigabyte SSD, and a terabyte of transfer. If you use our promo code SNAPOcean, you get 2 months for free with that bad boy. Also, DigitalOcean accepts new community guides all the time. They have great documentation, really good. It's like way up there on search results these days too. And so they give you a guide on how to write guides. If something you might be interested in doing, they might be willing to pay you too. They have staff there that does the technical editing and reviewing. They really invest in this aspect. From top to bottom, DigitalOcean's serious about every feature they implement, and you can really tell. Their entire SSD infrastructure, the 55 seconds or less spin-up time of a rig, the complete application stacks ready to go, the big selection of different distributions, and FreeBSD that you get to pick from. It is truly a great service, and you can support the show at the same time by using the promo code SNAPOcean. Just go to DigitalOcean.com, and a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the TechSNAP program.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, guys. So let's talk about something that you knew was going to be in the TechSNAP news sooner or later, because it's just going to happen. Researchers have bypassed chip and pin protection at Blackhat.
Yes. So, they didn't actually attack chip and pin itself.
Okay.
They attacked the terminals that actually do it.
Okay. Fascinating.
So the payment industry is becoming more driven by security standards. However, the cornerstones are still broken even with the latest implementations of these payment systems, mainly due to a focus on standards rather than on security. Credit card companies, for the most part, have moved away from the old swipe and signature credit cards to chip and pin cards, except in the US where there's chip and signature for some reason. The technology is known as EMV, or EuroPay MasterCard Visa, which is supposed to provide customers with an added layer of security, and it's beginning to see some wear, according to researchers. Then, as an aside, I just have a link here to a story about how the chip card transition in the US has been a disaster.
Oh, geez, really?
That's a little aside. You can go read that later if you want.
Okay. Just if you want to entertain yourself.
Yeah. But Nir Voltman and Patrick Watson, who are researchers at NCR Corporation, staged a series of malicious transactions live in their talk at Blackhat on Wednesday, which was Wednesday of last week, so a week ago. Anyway, demonstrating how they could capture the Track 2 data and bypass chip and pin protections.
Uh-huh.
They say, instead of attacking the operating system of the POI or POS device, the point of sales, the researchers bypass much of the built-in security. This includes integrated cryptographic security schemes. They say breaking crypto, after all, is very hard because cryptography is just math, and math, for the most part, just works. But the crypto is just part of the overall security system, and the other pieces are what is vulnerable. This is made even easier since much of the information the team sought in their attack was not encrypted on the payment device. So in their first demonstration, the duo used a Raspberry Pi 3 to capture the Track 2 data packets in real time. By a passive man-in-the-middle compromise, Wireshark picked up 2 interactions from the data entered into a pin pad running flawed production software that's currently in the wild.
Oh, boy.
So the pin pad was talking to the other device without any encryption.
And they just were like, well, let's just see what we can just find by running Wireshark right here, right away.
Yeah, on their little Raspberry Pi and holding it beside the device. The 2 declined to specify the company's name, but claimed that they had spoken with the vendor and asked them to implement TLS to encrypt the connection. And the vendor said, sorry, we can't. The hardware's too old and underpowered.
Yeah, it's like, okay, do you realize I'm owning you with a Raspberry Pi right now?
Like, we could use something smaller. It was just something easy to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then even when it's encrypted, it's like the garbled data can be transferred into readable bits. You get the service code expiration data, discretionary data, and so on. Data that can tip a hacker off to whether a card has a chip or not. And if you clone the card but write a certain value back to the track data, then it will think it doesn't have a chip. And if it doesn't actually check with the bank to know if it's supposed to have a chip, then yeah, a bunch of stuff like that. The pair also showed how easy it is to do the other stuff. So they could do things to trick the EMV into not working and make you swipe the card. And then obviously at that point, you can clone the card's track data and just steal the card that way. But if you steal the card that way, your problem is always you don't have the 3-digit security code.
Oh, yeah.
So they injected, wrote an extra file onto the point of sales terminal. And now as part of the checkout process, it asks you to type in the 3-digit code off the card.
There, that solves that.
How many people do you think at a store would fall for that? Probably almost all of them. They're like, oh, it's extra security now, right? It's actually checking that 3-digit code. Like when I buy something on Amazon or over the phone, when they ask for that code, now they're checking it at the grocery store. This is extra secure, right? Nope, that's the compromised pin pad stealing that information along with your other stuff.
Just let me note that down.
Yeah. And the researcher said customers trust pin pads, and they usually think that it's doing what it's supposed to do. So yeah, according to the researchers, attackers could compromise the pin pad and inject a form, like they call it Malform.FRM in this instance, and no one in this just do that when no one's looking at the machine, and quickly change it back to the customized welcome screen. And they say both Voltman and Watson advocated that pin pads leverage strong crypto algorithms and allow only signed whitelist updates instead of just accepting new files from anybody who walks up to them, right? Point of sale pin pads are usually PCI certified, but the two pointed out that PCI doesn't require encryption over the local area network, only over the internet. Because they assume the LAN is secure.
Right.
Which it almost never is.
Yeah, and it really is just takes that 1 weak link.
Yep. I think the PCI DSS should be changed to say SSL everywhere.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. I absolutely agree.
And that's how, so then they use the API in the payment terminal to pop up this extra pop-up to make you type in the CVV, and then they can steal your card. But if it's a chip and pin card, it uses a pin, right? So then they decided they could socially engineer the user. So when the box pops up and you type in the pin, and it pops up an error message saying, oh, you typed the pin wrong. Try again. And then it pops up the real pin box that the bank's actually going to use. And you type in your pin, and it does the transaction. You don't realize that the first box was actually stealing your pin number and recording it along with the data from your card when the skimmer did it. And yeah, so they're like, yeah, users need to know not to type it. If you type in your pin and it says wrong and wants you to type it again, you probably don't want to use that pin pad.
No, that's a good tip. That's a bad sign.
Yeah.
Geez, isn't it interesting, Alan, how just when you think something's been locked down, you just realize it just takes looking at this problem from a different perspective and attacking it from a different angle.
We've seen some attacks before that attack the actual EMV protocol itself, but in this case, it turns out all those payment card processing terminals are tiny things with old software that doesn't get updated, and they're full of security holes. It's like, who would have guessed? A bunch of terminals made by people that don't care about computer security. It's like they didn't even have to go over, like, they're not even exploiting the old operating system that's on these things. It's probably full of exploits. They were just targeting the software itself and the user experience of it. But yeah, they say consumers should never re-enter their PIN. It's a telltale giveaway that a PIN pad may have been compromised. Although Voltman added that he usually frequents stores that allow him to pay with Apple Pay, as he finds this technology more secure than EMV because your credit card number is never actually sent between your phone and the device, just a token.
Mm-hmm. Or I don't even think your name is either. Right.
Whereas with the card, all that's on the track data. Mm-hmm. He says it's cool, but it's not a secure standard. No. This is as part of their demo, we will include EMV bypass, blocking PIM protection, and scraping PIMs from various channels.
Holy smokes.
And then I have their slides here, which weren't up earlier when I wrote the story, but when I came back, they
great
slides.
Okay.
Because this talk was relative when we recorded this episode. The talk was yesterday, so it's cutting edge here. And then we have links some other coverage. Although if you search the topic, there's like every news outlet has jumped on this one.
Sure.
But yes, their slides are difficult to go through without knowing what they were actually saying along with them. They're not the type of slides where it actually contains all the bullet points.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's more like jokes to get people to laugh during the presentation.
Which makes for a more entertaining presentation. It just makes the slides less useful.
Although the diagrams are legit.
Yes. Although some of them would actually, you would benefit from their explanation that went along with the diagram.
Yep. Interesting.
I don't know if there will be videos from this or not. I don't know if they normally do that or not.
Maybe if people see them, could you please submit them to the subreddit, TechSNAP.reddit.com, so people could check it out later on after we get the show posted. Cool. And also not cool and really just requires that they do encryption across the LAN the entire way. That's really all it requires.
And well, some of them, it requires that you don't let anybody who walks up to the device insert new configuration on it either.
Yeah. One of the most common arrangements I see is a really crappy, small, tiny network just for the point of sales devices. Oh, yeah, this hub, that's for all our point of sales devices. And then that just uplinks over here, and this just bypasses the whole LAN, and we have a dedicated connection for that.
Well, yeah, sure, but the problem in this case is the software actually running on the devices is full of holes.
I know, that's why I'm saying that doesn't work. That doesn't work. But that's the most common thing that I see. Yep. Freaks me out, Alan. Freaks me out. Makes me worried that my everywhere I go could be a.
Well, yeah, because some of them they were showing like the payment systems built into gas pumps. Mm-hmm. How often do you think those get replaced?
Yeah, that could be 20.
Well, especially because most of them were probably just replaced to support chip.
Yeah.
And they're going to be full of all these holes, and they're
not going to replace them for, a gas pump?
I just replaced that. I'm not going to replace that again.
Yeah. Hopefully they're building those pumps to have the computers more modular, but something tells me.
Well, it sounds like it's like, oh, we used such a low-powered chip it can't even do SSL.
Yeah. The things can barely do the stupid video ads they're playing back and all that kind of crap that's all over the pumps I go to these days. That's why things like Ting are refreshing. It's just a totally different look at an industry that's often full of crap and gimmicks. Ting is mobile that makes sense. You just pay for what you use, $6 for the line, and it's your minutes and your messages and your megabytes on top of that. So check them out at techsnap.ting.com. I wanted to mention really quickly, we have a bunch of great devices on sale over at Ting at the moment. So it's a super good time to go in and get like a refurbished device. And there's also some really nice low-price devices like the Kyocera Dura XTP, which is a indestructible phone practically with a week-long battery life and super loud speakers for $63, no contract, only pay for what you use. Ting has CDMA and GSM networks. They also have the Kyocera Torque XT, which is like one of their high-end indestructible Android phones for $83. High-end in the sense it can take a punishment. Ting is really great, and if you're a service technician and you want on-demand internet, that's a great option. They have the Netgear Zing. It's $6 for the line, and you just pay for when you use it. So if you just use it from time to time for emergency support, it's a great way to go. And because they have CDMA and GSM, you can pick whatever covers you best. I think you're going to like it.
A lot of people, their biggest problem with smartphones is the durability, and so having something that kind of actually lets you have a compromise between the two.
Well, and Noah at DEF CON, as we record this, is bringing one of these beater phones with him and not bringing his Android Samsung device.
I can understand that. You're going to DEF CON.
And so that's where Ting is super flexible for him, too, for when traveling like that.
Yeah, with that $6 a line, it doesn't hurt you to have a second phone.
And he bought 10 Ting Sims when they had them on sale for $1 a piece. They're $9. You can buy them now, and you only pay when you actually activate it. So he just bought a batch of them, and then he just pops them in when he's ready.
Yep.
TechSNAP.ting.com. Thanks, Ting. So the Pwnie Awards are not like My Little Pony. They're not like a horse. The Pwnie Awards are like Pony with a PWNIE Awards, and I'm guessing this is
somebody, right?
Yeah. All right, I'm looking forward to this. You got a breakdown of the Pwnie Awards, Alan?
Yes. So the Pwnie Awards is the annual award ceremony celebrating the achievements and failures of security researchers and the security community, and they're awarded once a year at Blackhat, USA, which this time took place August 3rd in Las Vegas. So they have all these different awards. So the first one was the best server-side bug. And this went to the Cisco ASA, which is their security appliance, for its IKV1/IKV2 fragmentation heap buffer overflow. Trying to remember. If I had more time, I would have written back and found the link to each TechSNAP episode where we talked about each of these different vulnerabilities. But do you remember this one?
Oh, yeah.
It was where you could get the Cisco to eventually execute a chunk of code that you put in a IPsec VPN packet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's just in the packet.
I don't remember the episode of TechSNAP, but we did talk about this one. A little Googling and you'll find it. Mm-hmm. And that was the best server-side bug in the last year.
How about that? That's something. Look at us.
The best client-side bug was GNU's glibc get adder info, where your DNS entry could cause a stack buffer overflow. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just me can SSH into your server makes your server look up my IP address, and if I put malicious data in the reverse, your machine's now owned.
That's solid.
That one was crazy, yeah. Best privilege escalation was in Widevine QC Trust Zone. A software called Trust Zone that's supposed to control access, and it has a privilege escalation.
Yeah, that's no good.
Yep. There's that one.
Yeah.
The best cryptographic attack was the SSL v2 downgrade called Drown. Do you remember the Drown attack?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that was a big one. Best backdoor went to Juniper for ScreenOS.
Oh, yeah, sure.
They actually got 2 awards for that same one. So we'll get to the second one with more detail in a minute. The best junk or stunt hack was remotely killing a Jeep on the highway. Do you remember that one?
Yes, of course I do.
Yep. Best branding was Mousejack, the one where it could hijack the wireless the mouse and keyboards.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Epic achievement was never giving up and never letting us down. Travis Ormandy, who's the one of the researchers over at Google's Project Zero, who's been breaking into all the different virus scanners and so on.
We talked about him
holding
recently.
all those, taking everybody to task. I think he was the LastPass guy too, I think?
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, because of that, he got the Epic Achievement Award there. The most innovative research was dedupe est machina, which is a memory duplication as an advanced exploit vector, which is, I think, mostly about software like VMware that dedupes memory between VMs and using that to be able to steal data from other VMs that are on the same host machine as you. Lamest vendor response was Western Digital for the My Passport drives.
I don't remember that. What was the issue?
It's the encrypted external drives, and you could just trick the software into decrypting it for you.
Oh, boy, that does deserve an award.
Yeah. And, in particular, the vendor was like, yeah, we're not going to fix that. Anyway, we had a whole TechSNAP episode about that one as well. It's really validating what topics I picked for TechSNAP, isn't it?
It does, yeah. You have a good sense.
Most overhyped bug of the year, bad lock. Yeah, that was a lot of hype for not that much of a deal.
Yeah.
Then they had the best song. Somebody did a spoof of Chandelier and made it about Cyberlayer.
I see. Okay, very good.
Then the award for most epic fail was not awarded.
What?
Apparently, there was no epic fail in the last year.
Oh, well, I still think that Juniper one's pretty good.
Well, there's another award for that one coming up.
Oh, there is?
The Lifetime Achievement Award went to Mudge, who did Loft Crack.
That's good.
Which we were talking about
last week. Yep.
And then went on to, that he testified in front of Congress about how everything is terrible.
And voting machines are awful, right? Didn't he?
Yeah, and then eventually parlayed that into being the head of DARPA's cybersecurity program.
Well, hey, there you go.
And then did, the obligatory stint at Google and the security team, and then on to other things and so on. And then, yes, the Epic Ownage Award went to the Juniper backdoor.
Good. They got double awarded. That's good.
Well, yeah. So the worst backdoor was an award to Juniper for having the worst backdoor, and then the Epic Ownage Award was award to whoever. They don't know who it was. They just put some badass motherfucker.
I gotcha.
But this award is actually to the people that did the backdooring. So that's why there's 2 awards for that.
That's awesome.
And then, if you go over to the Pwnie's website, they have there was like they picked the top 5 to be the nominations for each category. So for a bunch of them, you can see some of the ones that didn't win, like image tragic, stage fright. Interesting, a FreeBSD one made it in there. The set F key, which is a vulnerability in the keyboard driver that was introduced in 1999 and only solved the other day, a couple of weeks ago. Symantec giving Bluecoat, the SSL intercept appliance, a intermediate CA, which is really
good one.
The whole report on the insecurity of self-encrypting drives, which had partly included that Western Digital one.
Oh, the Galaxy Edge baseband stack overflow.
Yep. The 60 Minutes episode about hacked phones, where the phone was already hacked before they gave it to them, and so it was all bogus. Or for the best marketing, which we end up going, best branding went to Mousejack, but runner-up was Backronym. Do you remember Backronym?
Loved Backronym.
Just because it was making fun of the whole having names for vulnerabilities.
That deserves some recognition.
Being a backronym, and they actually made the word backronym a backronym about MySQL was pretty amazing. So yeah, that was the Pwnies this year, and that was pretty good.
I like that they also call that 60 Minutes for that hacked phone piece, because that was such crap. It was such trash.
Yeah,
that's good. You know, it's nice, lighthearted. You get a little picture of a pony as your award. There's
like actually gold pony statues.
They give them. Oh, they do. It's not just a picture of it.
Statues this year, anyway.
I would treasure that in a weird, perverse way. I would actually.
Well, remember, some of these went to researchers for good work.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not the one to Juniper.
Yeah,
not going to treasure.
I hope they take that home to their offices, put it up there, and remember what they've done. And I hope they never make that mistake again.
In this case, it wasn't necessarily something they made a mistake, right?
The
Juniper one was they found the code in the repo and like, who put that there?
Okay.
Right.
Geez, I kind of wish I could have attended that. That looks like that would have been a lot of fun, specifically when they were rolling out the awards. That'd have been a blast. Any other thoughts?
I managed to get somebody tweeted pictures of a bunch of the slides from the awards, but not all of them. So that's why they're kind of sporadically linked.
That's nice that you put them in there, especially for the audio folks if they want to see something.
Well, in particular, it was when I was writing this last night, the Pwnie website didn't have the results yet. So all I had was the Twitter stream.
That's interesting.
This morning when I sat down, the website had been updated, and I could fill in the couple that the guy didn't get a picture of, or like the Juniper one, the picture was too blurry, and I couldn't read it. So yeah.
You know what? Speaking of high-end hardware, because let's speak about high-end hardware right now. iXsystems.com/TechSNAP. High-end hardware built for your workload, powered by incredible Intel processors. iXsystems.com/TechSNAP not only supports the show, but it's where you go to get a white paper to learn more about iX and maybe move things up the chain to switch over your purchasing chain to iX, where you're going to have a lot better result, not just with the sales, not just with the support, but with the long-term trajectory of the company. In fact, look at some of their clients over at iX. Yep. This list, it really... if anybody has any questions of what iX can scale up to, this is the U.S. Army has got to be, NASA has got to be. I mean, look at that, United States Navy.
You know, if you go in their little thing and go to the company history one and just look at that and realize that they've been around since, BSDI and before, before the first .com stuff, and they've survived all that because they're really good at this,
and they're focused, and they've been able to build out an incredible team.
Yep. And we dug up some old videos when we got talking about Leo Laporte starting to use BSD on BSD Now 2 weeks ago. We dug up some old videos from the old Tech TV before Comcast bought it, and they had Matt Olander, who's one of the guys at iX, there showing off a free BSD box from before iX was even called iXsystems, when it was still called Off My Server.
I remember that name.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so you go and trace that through that history page there, and it's just like, wow, look at all that stuff.
And, part of an interesting part of their evolution has been their participation with the community. And I wanted to mention Meet BSD is coming up in California. It's being put on by iX. Yep. It's November 11th through the 12th, 2016 at UC Berkeley. So check out more information at meetbsd.com. I'm willing to bet Alan Jude is going to be at Meet BSD California 2016. So you go say hi to Alan, wear your Patch Your S t-shirt, get a TechSNAP sticker. meetbsd.com if you want to learn more. And go check out iXsystems. It's just what you need to switch over to from your home, small business, storage needs, all the way up to big compute, server jobs, massive data center stuff. iXsystems.com/TechSNAP. Go check it out. I tell you what, I am hungry for a new storage setup too. So I'm looking at that FreeNAS XL and thinking, oh, one day. Yeah. And I kind of tempted to go to MeetBSD too.
Yep.
That does look.
It's always fun because it's got a slightly unconference setup. So there's lots of just getting to talk to the other people that are there and break out into breakout groups about a certain topic you want to actually talk about.
I'm tempted, very, very tempted. Maybe I'll end up going. MeetBSD.com. Okay, with the news all done, let's do the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com or popping that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website. Our first email this week comes in from Tim Y. And Tim says, I've managed a few IRC servers for internal use at work, but I'm intrigued by JBot. How does it work in the Jupiter Broadcasting chat room? How does it keep track of show times? How is it able to report on them by simply entering bang next? How does it parse URLs when they are posted in the chat? You could probably do an entire show on IRC, but in short, could you tell us about JBot's setup, please? Thanks. Love the shows. And I love JBot, too. Keep up the great work. Tim.
Yeah. So JBot is written in Ruby. And so when you type #next, it actually gets the Google Calendar RSS feed and finds out what's next and then posts it in the chat room. Yeah. And then for the URLs, it's literally has a regular expression on each line of text that goes by. And if it's a URL, it fetches the URL with, I think, curl, and then checks what's the title of that website and spits it in the chat room.
Yeah, also
there are tons of different frameworks for building IRC bots. Depending what your language of choice is to write it in, and then there's probably a framework. There's ones for Perl, there's lots for C and so on. There are pre-written bots for stuff like the Egg Drop is a framework for building bots, although the programming language you write the scripts in is TCL, which is a little strange. But so JBot uses the Cinch, CINCH IRC framework for Ruby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, it's all up on GitHub. Rekai has it all posted up on GitHub if you want to look at the source code and poke around how it's done. And you can get a little idea of how it works. It's also what we use to take title submissions and vote on them during the show. And
it has a back-end web server and actually lets you vote on the title setter stitches.
Yep, and also you can type in some host names and it pulls out quotes. We can use it to interact with the DigitalOcean droplet and activate and deactivate DigitalOcean droplets for us. So
at that point you get to anything Ruby can do, which is anything can do. So
it's pretty cool. So check it out. All right, Alan. So in fact, if you've never been in the IRC chat room, join us one time and you'll meet JBot. So Ginger Beer writes in about virtualizing pfSense, a common question and always a little bit different of a twist. So I have previously set up a Core 2-based PC as a pfSense router firewall caching proxy and OpenVPN unit that sits between the ONT and my switch. I set it up to replace the CRUD Wi-Fi router supplied by my ISP. Boom! One of the NICs was connected to the ONT using PPOE on VLAN 10, and the other NIC was connected to the switch and became my network's default gateway. This worked well, however, I would like to virtualize this and have attempted using ESXi, Xen, and even Hyper-V by setting it up with 2 virtual NICs. I am able to set up pfSense, set up the NICs, VLANs, but the WAN NIC will never receive an IP address or connection from the ONT as it would on my physical machine. Do you think this is a hardware or software problems? Any pro tips? Thanks, Ginger Bear.
I know lots of people do it. I've done a pfSense in VMware Server because that was free when I used it that long ago. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, I've had it work too.
There's I guess you're trying to do PPPoE from inside the VM. You might have to I know in VMware and ESXi, there's a setting on the NIC whether you allow promiscuous mode or not. Turning that on might help with that.
Yes.
But if it's not working in Zen or Hyper-V either, I'm sure there must be an answer on the pfSense forums because this would be a problem other people have.
I wonder if
lots of people do it in Hyper-V all the time, although PPPoE is slightly less common.
Could the ONT be? I mean, I wonder if there's. It wouldn't be MAC address filtering on DHCP.
It can be. Some devices do that. Like I know,
but
my
he was able to
ISP
hook up his Core 2 PC and it worked.
Right. But if it's still expecting that MAC address, it might not.
Yeah, maybe
work.
that's somehow in their system.
I know my cable ISP, I used to have to call them and get them to allow a different MAC address.
I did too. That could be that simple.
Kind of got rid of that because people change devices more often now.
Yeah, so I can tell you with absolute certainty that we have many people in our audience that are doing this, and both Al and I have tested this. We don't use it in production ourselves, but so it's doable. So I think it's something specific to maybe your ONT or your setup there. Mr. Beer or Bear, depending on how he likes
I think it might be the VLANs without promiscuous mode might be confusing something. Yeah. Because PPoE also involves other MAC addresses. I think it might just be make sure you allow promiscuous mode on the NIC in the virtual machine. But yes, I've virtualized pfSense before. And I know it will work in Hyper-V because Microsoft specifically wanted to support running pfSense in Hyper-V for the Azure cloud when places want to have their private stuff in VMs on a private network behind a pfSense that's actually on the internet in the cloud.
Slick.
So I know that is supported.
Ricky writes in with our next one. Hey, Alan and Chris, love all the JB shows. I posted a question about NFS eating all my RAM in the subreddit a few days ago, but I haven't gotten any responses. It wouldn't
be NFS that was eating. ZFS is eating all the RAM. Okay.
My main issue is the RAM is slowly used up when web and UI shares become unresponsive. I did not see this behavior with a different, less powerful machine using the same pool on NAS for free. Any help would be greatly appreciated.
You can limit the amount of RAM that ZFS will use by setting vfs.zfs.arc_max. If that's the problem, although your Reddit post has been deleted, so I can't read the rest of the details. So maybe
has it? I wonder why it's been deleted. Who deleted it?
I don't know. It might be because he might have done it because he solved the problem.
I undeleted it.
Okay, there we go.
I just undeleted it. So we can read it. Because why not, right? So he's got free NAS. Here you go. He's got 8 gigabytes of a USB boot stick, 2 5 terabyte drives, and a RAID Z1, 2 plugins for Ambient and Subsonic. I know.
Yes,
box. He has DDR3. On the free NAS, he has 8 gigs of DDR3.
There it is. He got it listed in a funny way. 8 gigs is not very much, especially for... Wait, I guess he's only got 5 terabytes of storage, so that's probably okay. There's a sysdetail setting you can set that limits the amount of RAM ZFS will use, although it normally doesn't kill itself like that. So I don't know.
I bet he didn't get any hits either because it got probably auto-deleted because of all the links he has in here. Reddit does that all the time.
I only see 2 links, though.
Yeah, that's all it takes. One of them's to eBay.
So he says he updated the auto-tuning box on FreeNAS, and it seems to stem the RAM usage.
Do you think 12 gigs would make a big difference, though?
Yes. Are you using... So he's running out of 9K jumbo frames. Are you using jumbo frames?
That turned on the...
Turning off jumbo frames, and I imagine that will solve...
Yeah, because it's specifically when he's transferring like 3 gig files over NFS.
Yeah, so your problem there is actually memory fragmentation. You're not necessarily running out of free memory, but you all your chunks of memory are 4K, and you would need, to get 9K of contiguous memory, you would need 3 4K pages side by side, and it can run out. So just disable jumbo frames, and you should be fine. You should have no trouble saturating a gigabit NIC without using jumbo frames.
And or make sure jumbo frames are turned on the other side. Would that also be?
No, this one is running out of memory because his memory become too fragmented.
Okay.
I've ran into this problem before as well. Although not enough, it wasn't enough to kill the machine, but I had 32 gigs of RAM in the machine, not 8. But yeah, so just disable jumbo frames, and that should solve your problem.
Hopefully that does it for you, Ricky. Hopefully.
Because I'm glad I noticed that last little update at the bottom where he posted the error message, because I wouldn't have figured out that that was the problem, because he didn't mention jumbo frames anywhere in here until the very, very end.
Key detail always does help.
Yep.
Yeah.
Error messages are useful.
And that post is now public. If you're watching and you have another tip for him, please do. I would love to see more people helping out in the subreddit if you don't mind, because we have a lot of really smart people watching, and you know how it is when you're working on something like Ricky is right now, and you get so close, but you just can't quite close the gap, and how thankful you are when you finally get that answer online. And you could help somebody with that closing that gap at techsnap.reddit.com. Captain Buahaha writes in, and he says, just curious, if I'm at home behind my NAT router and I watch a YouTube video, am I and my Netgear router participating in multicast? Does YouTube multicast out their videos when I click watch a video? Am I jumping in on a multicast stream with others already in progress? I am just curious as to what extent your typical home user ends up using multicast behind the scenes, maybe for Skype or something like that. Thanks.
The answer is never.
Yep.
You almost never use multicast. Multicast doesn't really work on the internet. Your biggest problem, it wouldn't make any sense for a YouTube video, because the chances of another person anywhere near you on the network watching exactly the same video at exactly the same time doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and you got to jump around for rewind.
Yeah, and if you're 5 minutes behind me in the video, multicast has no use for it. And so if they're only sending to one person at a time, then multicast it's just unicast. So multicast mostly consists of a bunch of devices all subscribed to sharing one IP address, and the data gets sent to that and it gets broke out. But basically, multicast only works inside LANs. It doesn't work on the internet, because it requires the cooperation of every router along the way. Because the way multicast works, so if you have, say, all the machines in this building, which are all through switches connected to one router, and another router over here, every router has to forward just one copy of the data, but has to forward it all the way through. Whereas, on the internet, that's not how it works. So multicast is only ever used inside LANs, basically. It's almost never used on the internet, because it's usually isolated to one hop, not many hops. So mainly the only thing that uses multicast is routers use it to talk to other routers that they're physically connected to, and share their routing tables. And then that router uses a different multicast on its next interface to talk to the routers on the next side. And it hops around like that. And it's used inside your LAN for a bunch of stuff, like finding other machines that are doing the same thing or whatever. But especially for watching one YouTube video, it would never have an advantage. The big advantage, if you wanted to do it, was if you're trying to stream video to, say, 5 conference rooms in the same building, and they're all on the same LAN and you do multicast, it would mean the sending machine would only have to send one copy of the video to the network, and then all those machines would download that one copy. Whereas if you use regular unicast, I would have to send 5 copies, one to each room, and that would take more bandwidth on the network.
Like a lot of the disk imaging solutions I used when I worked at a school district, multicast.
But the problem with that is multicast really only works over UDP. So you have to do your own reliability stuff. So when I did an imaging type thing for, not imaging though. So we used to take over the computer lab on the second Friday of each month at the college and have a LAN party.
Nice, did the same thing.
So the machines were already imaged, and the hard drive was they were deep frozen. So if you reboot it, it goes back to whatever. So we wanted to add the games. So we had a Steam Cafe license, which gave us all the Valve games for free for the weekend.
Wow.
Basically, we just get 50 different temporary Steam logins that we could use. So I would have one copy of all those, the updated versions of all those Steam games, and I need to push it out to every machine so we can all play Left 4 Dead or whatever. And so I used this thing called, I think it was MFTPD or something like that. I forget the name now. But it was multicast FTP. And so the one machine would set up and send over UDP at a rate I would have to specify, because UDP has no buffering, so you can tell it to send at 100 gigabits a second, and only a couple of packets will actually make it through. So it would send out the entire file at a prescribed speed. So I would have to, we only had 100 megabits, so I'd send out at 90 megabits. The whole 20 gigs of files. When it got to the end, it would start at the beginning. And so unlike TCP, where you send an ACK when you do get a packet, this client would send a NAC, or negative acknowledgement, whenever it missed a packet. So if it got packets out of order, it'd be like, oh, I never got packet number 7. So the server would compile a list of all the negative acknowledgements it got from everybody, all 50 machines. It would then go through and send any block one or more people had missed, and it would just quickly skip through the whole 20 gigabytes, only resend the blocks that where one or more had been missed, one or more machine had missed them. And then it would do that again and again and again until everybody had all the blocks, and then the files would be done. The problem, I thought about trying to use it for an imaging solution, but it relied on being able to seek around in the file, which made it a little more difficult to build an imaging solution based on it. But it probably could have worked.
There you go. So that's why you're not multicasting.
Yeah, you can run Wireshark on your network and look for multicast traffic, and you probably, other than some of the Windows talking to each other to find machines to share with, and routing protocols, and your switches and routers talk to each other on multicast, but you don't multicast over the internet.
No, you don't. Maybe one day, it looks like if Google has their way, Quick will be moving the web from TCP to UDP, so that could be an interesting day someday, but not this day.
Yeah.
Not this day.
That's mostly just to accomplish what TCP Fast Open does. The problem with UDP is you can spoof the from address because there's no three-way handshake. Whereas TCP Fast Open, you do the regular setup the first time, but then you get a cookie, and you can come back and be like, I was already here. It's like having the stamp at a club or at a theme park.
I'm good. I've already been checked. So if you want to send us your questions, we'd love to get them. Please do. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, pop the contact link, and choose TechSNAP from the dropdown, or email us directly, techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com. All kinds of categories. All kinds of categories? Yeah. A plethora of categories you can ask us questions about. How about that? Just send them in, and we'll feature them in future episodes of the TechSNAP show. But with the feedback all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, you made it, and that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't fit at the top of the show. But we still want to talk about them a little bit with you and give you some links to follow up on your own after the show. Some of these links were supplied by our intelligence network at techsnap.reddit.com. I think this first one probably came from there. Webcam hackers caught me wanking and demanded $10K ransom. That is a worst-case scenario, Alan.
Yep. Somehow they compromised his computer and turned on his webcam, got him doing the thing he was doing. At first, he laughed at them and said, I'm not paying 10 grand, do your worst. And then they emailed back pictures of a bunch of his Facebook friends and other stalking they had done.
And a copy of the video.
Yeah. If they're, they're on your computer, so they can see whatever you're doing, so they can quickly find, who you've been talking to on Facebook and so on.
Apparently, Mark Zuckerberg puts tape over his camera and his microphone.
Yep. Well, I think the tape over there is actually over like a USB port or something.
Well, that's also where the MacBook Pro's microphone's embedded under the speaker grill.
Never mind.
Yeah. That's interesting. That is not a good story.
So my Logitech C930E has a lens cap.
Oh, well, that's a good idea. That's nice.
Although you can tell it's like a last-minute idea.
A post-Snowden edition.
I don't know, but I'm glad that it has it.
Yeah.
Although my main use of it is when I'm traveling with it, it keeps fingerprints from getting on the lens.
Oh, that's also very nice, actually.
Yes.
All right, well, how about this one? Kaspersky Labs.
I don't get caught.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, you know what? I have to send it to him. Kaspersky Labs launches a bug bounty program. Hey-o, this sounds like a good idea.
Well, yeah, as we've seen with Google's research and so on, every virus scanner is terrible. Well, Kaspersky is launching a bug bounty, and they're not running it themselves. They're running it through HackerOne, someplace that Pornhub and other people did, because it takes a lot of the work off you, and they kind of become experts at running bug bounties. So it seems like a good trade-off.
Yeah, and the more companies that do that, the better for a while.
Exactly. And they're offering rewards of up to $50,000 for privilege escalation and other types of attacks. In particular, the article also goes on to talk about the stuff they did before opening up the bug bounty program to make sure that, specifically like, otherwise the first 10 researchers that look at this are going to give us 3 months worth of work. It's like, you can't just start a bug bounty program. You have to have already done an audit, done your software development lifecycle stuff, and get all your ducks in a row before you can do that.
Yeah,
I guess all your ducks in a V.
That's good to think about. That's a good thought exercise. Okay, well, this is probably something that nobody's going to be surprised by, but it's an article over at Network World saying that Cisco is the one touting that potent ransomware is targeting the enterprise at a scary rate. Enterprise targeting cyber enemies are deploying vast amounts of potent ransomware to generate revenue and huge profits. Cisco estimates it to be 34 million.
Yeah, all we hear about is hospitals and schools and companies paying the bounties to get their files back because they don't have good backup strategies.
Okay, this sounds interesting. Bringing HSTS to Google.com.
Yes, this is the HTTP strict transport policy thing.
Yeah, okay.
Did I spell it right?
HSTS?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, HTTP strict transport security.
Yeah.
So this is basically a header you send and say this site will always be HTTPS. But Google goes on to talk about all the work they had to do to make sure that there weren't still old links that pointed to not HTTPS versions that would set off the alarm and so on, and how they gradually rolling this out by setting the TTL of the HSTS header to only like a day, so that if it does backfire, people only get the scary warning for a day and then it goes away again.
Smart.
Until they can roll it out, and eventually they'll amp it up so that their HSTS is for a year at a time.
I think that's clever. Canada wants to keep its federal data within its national borders. They've released its latest federal cloud adoption strategy. Now that's a title.
Yes,
now available for public comment.
Only completely unclassified data, which means it doesn't even contain personal data about any Canadian, is allowed outside the country. Everything else must retain sovereign control. So they figure as long as the data is stored on the cloud inside Canada, the government has the ability to, force the provider to do whatever they need them to do.
And this is specifically for government data?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All right, this is anywhere the government's storing anything. In particular, part of this stemmed from there was the census, which is legally required for every Canadian to fill out and answer. The one a couple of years ago, the government contracted Lockheed Martin to run the census.
A U.S. company.
Yeah. And so I think it was an 84-year-old lady refused to do it. And they tried to take her to court.
I love it.
She won because it's like, I shouldn't have to give my personal data to a U.S. company by law from the Canadian government.
Good for her.
And the court agreed with her.
KnowBe4 has our next story. The antivirus industry's dirty little secret. What is it, Alan?
This is looking at, they compared a bunch of different virus scanners, although I noticed they don't seem to have like the top tier ones like Kaspersky and Trend Micro. But
I do have ESET on there.
Okay. But if you scroll down a little bit, it's looking at their reactive detection rate versus the proactive detection rate. So the higher up the chart the virus scanner is, the better it is at finding viruses that are already known about. And the further to the right they are, is the better it is at finding viruses by looking at what the app's doing and realizing this is a new virus we just haven't seen before. And you can see that some of the low end, like Microsoft's, is not faring so well, whereas ESET's pretty good up in there.
Interesting. Avast does better than I would expect too.
But I don't know that much about the people actually doing the study, and it does seem like I don't see Symantec, Kaspersky, Trend Micro, or any of the places that do actual research and that type of thing on the list there.
They say their products are just still not that effective in the real world, and that's the dirty little secret of the antivirus industry.
Yes.
That might be right. This is what Apple should tell you when you lose your iPhone. This is too long for us to go through in the show, but this is a horrifying story of really tricky phishing. So this guy loses his phone, and there's a feature built into the iPhone that you can turn on that allows you to track your iPhone.
My iPhone or whatever.
And he got an SMS message and an email that preemptively notified him that his phone was found. And it looks really good. That looks like something Apple would do. Your iPhone 6 was found at 18:48 p.m. You can see location. They have an iCloud logo on the bottom. iCloud is a service of Apple, by Apple, like all that stuff. Copyright Cupertino, California. It looks legit. They also got a text message says your iPhone was found. Click on the link below to log in to view your iPhone's location at http://show-iphone-location.com. When you log in there, it has a very iCloud-looking the page they just copy the iCloud login pixel for pixel.
Yep.
Of course, once you log in, you're actually transmitting your information. When you do a little packet capture, you see that everything's being sent in plain text up to them. And it's an elaborate attempt to steal your information and unlock your phone. Because part of the problem with Apple has done with the new iPhones is if it gets stolen and taken away, you have to, even if you wipe it, you still have to provide the iCloud credentials to actually fully reload it. And
right. So this way, they can hijack your iCloud account, lock you out of it, change the email address on it. Right. Once they have the password, they can log in, change the email address on it, basically give the phone its full resale value again, and steal it from you.
Yeah, it kind of says
prevent
here
you from remotely locking the phone and increase the resale value of the phone.
He says he says if you ever lose your iPhone, iPad, or iPod, be extra alert for upcoming identity theft attempts. This is what Google.com and Apple should have told me 12 days ago when I searched for what to do. The scam was so professional that with perfect English and mobile responsive web pages, I consider myself lucky not to have given away my password. And as I said, I'm kind of a professional. He says, he's yikes. Yeah, it does look that iCloud login. It all looks really legit. You could even maybe show iPhoneLocation.com. You could almost even buy that if you're a new user.
Apple would have done a better job of naming that.
But maybe if you're not really thinking.
Exactly. Most people don't even look at URLs. So
open source is big business, and Walmart proves it. That's Forbes.com's.
Yep. So Walmart's actually open sourcing their software development stuff called OneOps, and hoping that in open sourcing some of the stuff they use internally just to run their business, but that isn't secret sauce for the Walmart, that other people will contribute to the open source and actually make their app better.
That would be the idea.
Yeah. So their idea is that a bunch of companies that all have to do the same thing. If they all work together on one really good open source solution instead of each developing their own in-house solution, all of them would benefit.
You know, pretty much the only time I ever have something really positive to say about Facebook is when it comes to like some of their development or research and things like that. Facebook Area 404 is their new hardware lab that's kind of neat. Has some cool things in there that we may see one day, like robotics, internet balloons, and things like that. They have a video where they brought TechCrunch in to take a tour of the new lab they've built. And they call it Lab 404 because they say they couldn't find any place in Facebook to do this. And then they're trying things like solar-powered internet rebroadcasting drones and lasers and whatnot. In the video, though, kind of weirdly, they talk about how Mark Zuckerberg isn't allowed in there because he might get hurt.
Built here? Oculus will prototype future versions of the Rift headset and the Surround 360 camera, data infrastructures like Facebook's Open Rack Network Switch Wedge.
Yeah, so they're going to do the Open Rack stuff there. A lot of their hardware initiatives are happening in this Area 404.
With so much hardware on its 10-year roadmap, it makes sense to build a dedicated laboratory. Now, Facebook will be able to build new servers, satellite dishes, and other gizmos much faster. The futuristic white lab is...
I tell you what, it's kind of neat if you want to read the article and watch the whole video.
Cutting and bending metal. In fact, Area 404 is so dangerous, Facebook won't let Mark Zuckerberg in.
Isn't that weird?
It's like, well, what about the people that have to work there?
It makes me think that they just don't want him around.
Well, you just don't want random people stumbling around while you're trying to bend metal and
especially that Zuckerberg guy. That guy just screws things up.
He's a klutz.
Yeah. So there you go. Even Mark Zuckerberg has problems. So if you'd like to submit a story to the TechSNAP Roundup, go over to techsnap.reddit.com and submit the story there. If there was something we didn't talk about, and you're like, guys, why didn't you talk about this? It probably didn't make it to the subreddit, and we could use your help. So please feel free to do that. You can also send us questions. Just go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and choose TechSNAP from the dropdown. And we also invite you emphatically to join us live over at jblive.tv, which is live at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC.
Boom, boom. Check it out. Watch the live times over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. That converts it automatically to your live time and also gives you a heads up if we're not going to be live because we pre-recorded or something like that. All listed out right there. You don't have to worry about any of it, though. If you just want the on-demand version because we have an RSS feed, you can just subscribe to that and get it automatically every single stinking week. Just go over to the page at jupiterbroadcasting.com and subscribe there. We have it just under the download links. Okay, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of TechSNAP, and we'll see you right back here next week.